Greetings from planetOZ, friends. I'm Oz. And, if you expend any kind of energy trying to expand your consciousness or get in touch with your spirituality, I really think those are the same thing. But if you put energies into these things, you will undoubtedly come across people who are advising that you think with your heart. Stop thinking so much with your head. Stop being in your head all the time. Think with your heart. Live from your heart. And this is basically an idea about living with a quiet mind, quieting down those egoic thoughts that are constantly running through your mind, and just kind of being. And that's all fine and good, and it makes sense, but one aspect of it that is puzzling is it sort of seems in some way like it's a descension. If you stop thinking with your head and you start thinking with your heart, it would seem that you're moving down, at least in terms of how we understand the energy centers and the upward movement that we're otherwise using to describe our process here in expanding our consciousness. So anyway, this was a question for me, so I meditated on it. I asked Intelligent Infinity, and I'm going to share with you what I got back. This is something any of us can do. It is, however, conceptual communication, so it's going to have my distortions. Just take what resonates with you and leave the rest. So the question, isn't it a descension when we stop thinking with the head and start thinking with the heart? And what I got back was basically this. When we hear thoughts in our mind, and there's an internal dialogue that we have about something, a decision that we have to make, we think it's just us thinking, and these are just our thoughts. But in actuality, it's maybe a clearer way to think about it as a conversation going on basically between 3 points of view, rather than just one. So that would be, in my understanding, that would be in New Age spirituality terms, that would be the ego, the higher self, the infinite creator, or the infinite expanding source energy. And in Christian terminology, it would be Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But either way, there's certainly more. It seems to come down to this idea of the Trinity of some variety, however you want to label it or call it, that we are actually three things simultaneously. And so all three of these minds, which basically would be, you could use those three labels, or what I sometimes like to think of it as the singularity, the infinite, and the in-between. So no matter how you frame the three things, it's easy to think of it as just three minds, and each of these three minds manifests within our body and connection to our nervous system. So and so the understanding here, if I got it right, is that the egoic mind is manifest in the gut. So the gut actually, or intestinal tract, has I think, if I recall correctly, the highest number of neurons outside of the brain, and psychologists refer to the gut as the second brain for that reason. So there are a lot of neurons, there's a lot of communication going on there, and when I heard this, a light bulb went off for me because of that aspect of the amount of neurons that we have in our gut, but also it kind of makes sense that the ego brain might manifest as the gut, because the ego mind is concerned with material things, all things material, and understands the universe through material and processing material, and consuming material. So that's exactly what's going on in the gut, the processing of our material world for energy. And so as this answer continued on, it would then go on to say that you have the egoic mind manifesting in the gut, and then the higher self or Holy Spirit mind manifesting in the heart, and the infinite or creator source God mind manifesting in the brain. So that last part kind of resonated a little bit too. When I was growing up, I remember being taught that we only use about 10% of our brains, and perhaps we've evolved since then, or maybe just the science has gotten better. They say we use more of it, but if you look around the world and you imagine, and if you ask yourself, if you ask yourself, well, if the brain that we have in our head is manifesting essentially our infinite mind or our God mind, when you look around, would you guess that to a great extent maybe people aren't using it as fully as perhaps we would like? It's seemingly an underutilized tool, and to me that reflects properly and accurately that we may be driven more by the egoic gut mind centered in the gut, and not the others higher up the chain. So as it happens, there's of course the most neurons we have are in the brain, in the mind, and it seems interesting, an interesting correlation to the way that the gut handles material and processes, consumes, breaks down material. The brain in our head is working with light, and electrically it is sorting through, processing, consuming. They're doing very similar things, but in different ways. So, but interestingly, the heart also has a cluster of neurons in it that is referred to sometimes as the brain of the heart. So that correlates too. If these minds, when manifest physically, are involve neurons as an aspect of that, then we would expect to see them in the heart as well. So another interesting aspect of this is that here's our chakra system, and in one of the reasons that I puzzled over this head-heart descension, so to speak, is because of this idea that we have of the energy centers, and all other things seem to correlate to an ascension up this path, not going down. So that was a part of the confusion and the impetus for asking the question in the first place. And just to look at this and think about it in law of one terms for a moment, you have your root chakra, your red ray, and if that is the only thing you have unblocked, you will manifest as earth, air, fire, and water. When you unblock orange ray or the sacral chakra, and these are all consciousness. Everything is so this is a root level consciousness. This is a sacral second density, first density, second density consciousness here. So when this is unblocked, you'll manifest as plants, animals, insects, things like that, until you become self-aware, and then you will unblock the yellow ray, the third chakra, the solar plexus, and this is the third density consciousness. So this is us. We are unblocked here in yellow ray as human third density, human third density consciousness, and we are trying, according to the law of one, what basically everybody here is doing, is trying to unblock the fourth chakra, the green ray, or the fourth density of love. So this all makes sense, right? Ascending, 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 and on it goes. So now it all makes more sense to me. And interestingly enough, I found that when I looked this up after the fact, and if you do meditations yourself and you ask intelligent infinity questions, it's kind of fun after the fact to sort of do a check on how things line up and what you knew before going into the asking and what was new as a result of the answer. For example, in this case, I knew that there was a lot of neurons in the gut, so it really didn't, it kind of clicked, but it wasn't a huge surprise that the ego brain was there. It was just kind of like but I did not know that there was a cluster of neurons in the heart until I looked it up after asking. And the other thing that I didn't know that I found very interesting was that I had just presumed that our intestines would be managed, I guess if you want to call it that, by either the root chakra or the sacral chakra, just because of the positioning where they're located, and that's generally kind of how it works. And so that's what I thought would happen. And then I looked up after the fact the chakra that manages the intestines, and come to find out it is actually the solar plexus. It's the yellow ray, third density consciousness chakra. Despite being up here, this manages the gut. So I thought altogether that was those were some interesting correlations and an interesting way to think about it. And since receiving this answer, I've actually found it kind of helpful from a meditation point of view, because sometimes when you're trying to, at least for me, when I'm trying to silence my mind, I try to silence my mind, and when the egoic thoughts turn off, it can feel a little claustrophobic, a little bit like drowning. And in the mental model of my mind, that's made even worse when I would think about the idea that I'm just going to stop thinking with my head and I'm going to start thinking with my heart. So it's even like a down, lower vibration, depressed, all of this kind of imagery, drunk even, it's just drowning here. And so to think instead, just as mental models go in the realm of consciousness and expanding it, it's just interesting that in thinking about it rather as turning off the egoic mind down here to instead think from here, it's no longer a claustrophobic feeling. It is an elevated feeling. It is a feeling of being of thinking from a higher space, from a higher vibrational space, and it does ultimately feel like thinking. There aren't the thoughts racing through the mind, but somehow, kind of to your own surprise, you're still doing all of these things with the silence there. At least that's how it's felt to me. So I don't know. I think the mental models are important, and thinking about these things in different ways is helpful. Whatever way. Again, these are my distortions. So what resonates with you might be useful, but I found that useful in thinking about it that way. And so there you have it. The thinking. I guess when we're growing up, we always say, "Man, it's just I'm thinking. I gotta stop thinking," or whatever. So maybe all this time we should have been like, "Oh man, I've been thinking. I've been thinking so much. My egoic brain is just sore. Oh, it's just so tired." Ciao from Planet Oz.